Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Amy Turum. I'm with the Department of City Development, and I'm here along with my colleagues from the Department of City Development, Matt Hazley and Rhonda Zali. And we also have our colleague from Historic Preservation, Tim Askin, and we have Alderwoman Coggs with us. Thank you so much, Alderwoman, for helping us host this webinar for potential proposers for the property at 2673 North King Drive. Just a little bit of housekeeping for folks. I want to make sure that if you have questions that come up while we're talking, you put them in the chat. We will have time for question and answers when we're done with the presentation. We just want to get through all of the information because it's possible your question will be answered by us prior to the end of the presentation. And with that being said, I'd like to have Alderwoman Coggs welcome us to this important opportunity in her district.
Good morning, and thank you. Thank you for taking the time to join us this morning to hear about this tremendous opportunity to develop within the Brownsville district. I am sure that you have heard about some of the great things that are already going on in the Brownsville area. The many projects that we have and the great residents and neighborhoods that make up the Brownsville district. There continues to be opportunity for additional development. And today, as we talk about this iconic historic building on Center and MLK Drive, I just hope that you all take notes, ask questions, and we get some great submissions for proposals for what could be and what is possible at that corner in the Brownsville district. I will say I have a personal attachment to this building. Growing up on King Drive in Burleigh myself, this location was a favorite spot of mine and my mother's. They used to have a cafe at the bottom called the Fireside Lounge. And back then when I did eat meat, I used to love the cheeseburger and fries that Miss May used to cook up on the grill. It would be so great to see this building come back to life. For too many years, we watched it be boarded up on this corner, and you might be that person who can help to bring it back to life. So please listen in today, get all the information that you need, and give us those great ideas and those great proposals as we continue to build the best King Drive in the nation and the best Brownsville as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman Coggs, for that interesting and personal anecdote about this building. Many of us pass by this building regularly during the course of our business, and we're very, very excited for this opportunity for the community. We're going to go through a short presentation again and questions and answers after that. So as Alderwoman Coggs mentioned, the building that we're talking about today is on the southwest corner of North King Drive and West Center Street. The parcel itself is approximately 46 feet wide by 150 feet east and west. And there is a building that is a smaller, less story building to the south, immediate south of this building that is not part of this project. And we'll go through that through various pictures that you'll be able to see. This is the building itself that's for sale. So there is the kind of two structures almost, it appears like from this aerial view, but we'll be able to see other views where it seems less that way. There's one commercial unit to the south, and then there's the commercial building to the north, which is not split into units right now due to the construction issues with the interior of the building, and we'll go over that. There's some things I wanted you to notice on this slide. There is a significant amount of land, almost half of the parcel, that is currently grass, vacant area. If you choose, as part of your potential development, to put some type of parking use at the rear of the building, an alley entrance would be required as part of your development. If you chose to do some type of addition or new construction in the rear of the building, which is potentially possible subject to historic preservation approval. That would be the section of the building that you, or the property that you would do that on. It is our anticipation to get proposals that include keeping the building that is facing North King Drive and Center Street, both of these buildings here, or the building here. And we are open to uses in the rear, depending on a lot of different factors. And we're going to go over those factors today so that you have the best information possible when you're putting together your proposal. Here is a view of the historic Hummel E-line building as it used to look some time ago. This is an undated photo, but you can see that it features a lively street edge, advertisement for Schuster's, which we all know is a department store here in town, and an additional building covering that vacant grass space that we just talked about a little while ago. You'll see here in a photo from May of 2009 that used to be a one-story property, and that was listed as a tavern previously. That's not one of the desirable uses we're looking for in the future, but that's just the history of the building, just like Alderwoman Coggs explained. And if I can get to the next slide, we wanted to show you some photos of the interior of the building, and my colleague Matt Hazley and I have walked through this building a couple of times. If you've gone to any of our showing appointments, you know that we've restricted the access to this building to certain areas of the building for the safety of potential proposers due to the degree of degradation of the structure in the interior, such as the floors and joists. So I'm going to have Matt Hazley talk a little bit more about the details of what he sees here and what potential developers need to consider when contemplating the condition of the premises and what renovation is really going to look like for this challenging property. Matt, just let me know when you want me to advance the next slides.
Thank you, Amy. In this slide you have before you right now, you'll see that the beam, you can see the three pillars, 1, 2, and 3, heading towards the light along King Drive. So we're looking at Center Street looking east on the first floor, and the beam actually terminates at the third beam. Next slide. We're looking a little further back off of Center Street, looking east again. The majority of the floors are in poor condition and will not withstand any support at this time. And that's due to the roof that has considerable leakage from precipitation that has rotted the wood inside the building. So I think it's important to look at all aspects of the building, from the structural integrity of it, from the basement to the rooftop. Next slide. This is actually the first floor again. Looking inside the door when you walk in off of Martin Luther King Drive, the first slide in your left with the blue border around it is to your right or to the northeast corner of the building, where the access is a little set back from the sidewalk. You can see that the original facade had large windows that are currently boarded, as well as a transit situation above the windows up to the other areas. Next slide. This is important too. There appears it may have been some fire damage at one time on the left photo, and you can see that some of these beams have been damaged by the fire, and that contributed to the precipitation of water and snow coming in, have questioned the structural integrity of the interior. And when you look at a property like this, look at it with a realistic view, because it's a beautiful building. It has a lot of potential, but please look at the tuck pointing from the exterior to the interior structural conditions of the property. It really put together a comprehensive plan with a lot of what if scenarios, because that's going to be very important to make sure your budget is adequate to handle the lift to make it certified. Next. This is another example of the fire. You can see the blackness on the charred boards, as well as the failing of some of the wood beams crossing the building. Next. So now we're looking at the circle on your right, which is the yellow circle. So now we're looking from Martin Luther King Drive west along Center Street to your right, and that's the beam I mentioned earlier in the first slide I spoke about, where the beam just ends right there. So there's no supporting mechanism above this leg of the building fronting onto King Drive. The photo on the left with the blue border again shows the floor conditions that were hardwood floors at one time, beautiful. Could be restored again, a little bit of love and help. So we'll continue on.
Thank you, Matt, for those descriptions of those photos. As you can see, those photos, and I'm just going to swing back for just one moment. This photo on the left was taken on the first floor of the building. This photo on the right was taken from the second floor of the building. And the photo on the left here was taken looking up into the second and above floors onto the building from the staircase. Just for a little bit of more information. And this bar area, this is the southernmost portion of the first floor of the building. So just to add a little bit more context, because during your showings, some of you may not have been able to see these areas due to the amount of holes in the flooring and our restrictions of where you were able to walk during that time for your safety. So all that being said, if you're planning on proposing, please bring a structural engineer through the building who will help you be able, or to the building who will be, or show them this presentation, which is being recorded, which will help them get an idea of the degree of work that will need to be done in order to bring this back to a successful renovation. They can find more information at our website, milwaukee.gov/CRE. Stands for commercial real estate. The property is also on MLS. When you go to milwaukee.gov/CRE, you will notice that the proposals are due at 12 noon on Thursday, June 30th. You'll see that we have a listing sheet, a historic land use investigation, which will go through all of the historic uses of the property going back to construction. A historic designation study report. This property is locally designated currently only, and Tim will talk a little bit more about what that means and what the potential for designation otherwise that could lead to tax credit means. You'll see some conceptual designs that we'll go through shortly and some additional photos. This is an example of one of the conceptual designs that was put together by the King Drive bid and UWM CDS, Community Design Solutions, which is part of the planning and urban development section at UWM. You can see they put together a use that is an office hub, like a co-working space and a podcasting studio with some other uses, residential or commercial, to the upstairs. This is a really great example of what this building could look like, but I did want to bring a call out to your attention as these windows that were put into this design would not pass approval for historic preservation. These windows don't reflect the original style double hung windows, which would be required under the historic designation requirements and renovation requirements for this building. So it's very important that as you're scoping out your project, and if you have questions about materials and whether certain types of renovation would be allowed, that you consult with the Historic Preservation Office. We certainly will look at proposals that likely won't have everything completely fine-tuned by historic preservation at the time of submittal, but having that completely fine-tuned and getting a certificate of appropriateness will be a part of this requirements for development and will be something that will have to be attended to. Oh, another note, if you do a rooftop type deck as contemplated here, you would want to set that back a little bit for safety purposes. That was something we noticed when we talked about this design as well. I also wanted to show you the rear view of this rendering because it does show the parking use in the back. It shows the appropriate landscape buffer under the portion of the code 295.405, which is the landscaping code you would need to reference when contemplating how you would address a parking lot in this type of area. There are various options you could use in addition to landscaping, including certain types of fencing, which is something you can research further at 295.405. We're going to talk about this a little bit later too, but there's something else on this building that I wanted to bring to your attention. Since this is in the historic Brownsville area covered by the Brownsville Advisory Committee, you can see that the building has some enhancements that are reflecting an art type use on the outside, such as a mural. Recently, we've heard from the Brownsville Advisory Committee in the evaluation of other proposals that it's important that the art is a central component of their evaluation and not just necessarily a mural on the outside. We're going to talk a little bit about that later, but just something for you to contemplate while you're thinking about how you incorporate Brownsville as the artist and entertainment hub for the city of Milwaukee. So your development obligations, we talked a little bit about a need for a certificate of appropriateness. Tim is going to talk about the historic designation study report and the Historic Preservation Commission process in a moment. And we're expecting that you're going to finish renovations in a timely manner. But as far as what the exterior of the building looks like, the department is more concerned that the Historic Preservation Commission is satisfied. Suggested uses for your commercial space include restaurant, office, retail, business, multifamily with first floor commercial. The uses that are not allowed shouldn't be a surprise to many of you who are used to proposing on city projects. These are the things that we do not like to see for city projects. So, and we certainly have some of those uses in that area already. So we think that area is covered in those regards and would like to really see your restaurant, office, retail, business, et cetera, at that location. When it comes to how you are putting together your project funds, we have an asking price of $15,000. We also want you to put together your budget based on your repairs and improvements, and then we're going to ask you for proof of funds before closing to show the total of your purchase price, your repairs and your improvements, and those are going to vary heavily based on your use. For example, if you're putting in a restaurant that requires a full cooking system with a range hood and stainless countertops and everything else, that's going to be significantly more expensive than if you're putting in a use that does not involve that type of cooking. So that's why we leave your budget up to you and don't say you need a minimum of X to complete this project. We need to see that your budget is reasonable based on your proposed end use, which is going to vary based on what you're looking to do. What we are offering is a historic infrastructure preservation fund forgivable loan or grant of up to $50,000 to assist you with this building. Because this building is locally designated historic, we are offering this opportunity as a special financial assistance to this project, which is very unique and a great resource given the degree of disrepair that this building is in. We also have our regular resources, including commercial corridor resources, which are available at milwaukee.gov/DCD/business toolbox. That system has been updated so that you can use one application for all of the different types of products available from the Commercial Corridor Toolbox team. So you won't have to fill out separate applications for a signage grant or separate applications for a facade grant. You can do that all in one, and you can fill it out online to make it easier for you to apply for our resources. We also have the focus on energy, which may be able to provide additional assistance. The Business Improvement District number 8, headed by Ray Hill, who will be able to talk about any resources or assistance that the King Drive bid might be able to provide. And also PACE financing, which helps you with energy improvements to a building. And since this building is considered to have no systems whatsoever, as far as mechanicals or electricity or efficiency, there may be options for you through PACE financing as well. So what are we going to want to see for you, from you when you submit your proposal? We are going to want to see a detailed project use and description. We want to see how you are going to activate the street. That is very important to our planning department. They do not want a passive use at the street. We want an active street that brings people to the corridor and provides amenities that are in need. We are going to want to see your parking plan. That has been an important question of the Brownsville Advisory Committee and the Alderwoman. Of how many people will your business and first floor use bring to this community or your residential uses, and where are they going to park? We want to see your sustainable elements and stormwater techniques, whether you're including any private property that might be adjacent to this property as part of your development, whether it'll be an owner-occupied business or residence. And if it's not going to be an owner-occupied business or residence, if you plan on being a landlord or a building owner who will be leasing the space to someone else, do you have a letter of interest or a tenant identified? An identified tenant is always important to us when possible. And we realize that many places may not be ready to put in an LOI or a letter of interest on a property that isn't owned by someone yet, but it really bolsters your application to become the developer if we know that you've thought about this ahead of time and that the space isn't going to be sitting vacant, that there's someone ready to come in and be a partner with you or a tenant of yours. We would want to see a business plan if you're a startup. We have definitely sold properties to businesses that are newer before, and they've brought in their business plan and shown us that they're working with the wide variety of resources available for startups and worked with them. I will say this renovation, though, isn't necessarily for the faint of heart. A startup might be a better tenant unless you have a very experienced construction team. This building will be a tough renovation. So ensuring that the people responsible for the construction end of this are very experienced will be essential. We'll ask you what your basic budget is. This is an estimate. We understand there's going to be differences once you do your full due diligence, and we will allow you a period to do that due diligence. But if you submit a proposal that says that you're going to spend $100,000 to renovate this property, we know that that's not reasonable. So please try to get estimates with a contractor, with a structural engineer, and with the team that you intend on using, if possible, to get a realistic number, because we will judge you based on whether that number is realistic or not. So let's talk historic preservation. Tim Askin is here, and he has a lot of details that you're probably wondering about what you need to do with this building and how you could possibly get tax credits. Tim?
All right, hello, Tim Askin here, representing the Historic Preservation Commission. On the screen is our lovely guidebook. While it has a cover photo of something downtown, you will find that most of the photos and guideline and sample buildings inside are actually based off of King Drive. So, like the drawing on the left, you can see here, this is from inside the book. Typical historic Milwaukee storefront kind of thing you would see on King Drive, although more likely in brick on King Drive. What the Historic Preservation Commission is going to want to see from you on this building is keeping the storefronts generally intact, putting back in double hung windows, getting the masonry repairs right. Beyond that, additions are possible off the back, separate apartment building off the back, quite possibly. That's up if that makes your map work and it works for the Department of City Development. Additions are entirely possible. But basically, the goal is to try to get back to that historic photo Amy had up towards the front of the presentation. Yeah, I should have remembered the page number for you, Amy. Sorry. So, yeah, bring back the windows. If some of them are bricked in, well, that's a thing that happens, and we don't necessarily expect you to reopen all of them except for the two storefronts and the main front on King Drive. There's a couple bricked in on center, which there are on the ground floor. Yes, the ones that are boarded up, yes, you're going to have to put windows back in or do something better than boarding if they don't work for your floor plan. So, and some of you are familiar with historic preservation tax credits. Some preliminary contacts we have had with the state of Wisconsin suggest that they don't believe this building will qualify. However, with a good historic consultant and a potential buyer submitting that paperwork rather than the city itself, sometimes your odds improve. Because the building is gutted, if you do get city historic preservation does not really care what you do to the interior. And if you were able to get the historic preservation tax credits, there would also not be much review of the interior because there's not much to be saved inside. As Amy and Matt said, even some of the floors that would be typically saved in a situation like this are just a little too far gone to consider restoration. Some other advantages you have is access to historic building code, which is in the 2015 edition of the International Existing Building Code. There is some leniency with staircases. Existing staircases can generally be kept at their same width. Fire and noise separation between different uses can be reduced a little, and some of the fire code requirements are reduced a little, as long as you keep the building historic, which in this case is just the exterior for us. Beyond that, good luck to all of you coming up with a good project, and we hope you give us some life and activity on King Drive, just like the rest of the other city departments and Alderwoman Coggs.
Thank you, Tim. If you don't mind, could you explain the process for getting a certificate of appropriateness for a proposed renovation in brief for people who may not be familiar with that on the line?
Sure. So the best thing to do is once you have some rough conceptual sketches and know you're going to submit a proposal, is to come in and talk to me or one of the other staff at the Historic Preservation Commission. We'll give you some general guidance on whether you need to do some more work on your design or some slight tweaks that'll make the Preservation Commission happy. And if you're in a good place or disagree with us, we will get you scheduled for the commission. They meet about once a month, and they will give you a formal thumbs up or thumbs down on anything you're proposing for the exterior for the property. And as mentioned, typically we will not close the sale until the Historic Preservation Commission is satisfied with your exterior design.
Thank you, Tim. That is absolutely correct. We would need the Historic Preservation Commission to be in full endorsement of your design before the Department of City Development would close on your sale. Some other things you might want to note is that Historic Preservation will need to review any potential additions or new construction on the property. As we've learned with past projects, and is the case here, the property is historic, including the land that the building is not on, so the grassy area to the rear of the property. So when you contemplate any new construction, if that's something you're contemplating, that will have to be reviewed by the Historic Preservation Commission as well. Now, certainly you're not going to be able to produce the type of building exterior that exists for this building as is, because that is not of the times, not of the current degree of capability for most developers, and extremely expensive at this point and different. So that's something that if you're contemplating, we want to have you perhaps submit a written question if you have questions about it, not contemplate going over 3 stories, and also understand that Historic Preservation is going to need to review that. So this slide showcases some common design problems in our remodeled storefront that Historic Preservation wouldn't want to see. In some cases, people cover up some of these beautiful windows. What Tim is looking for is for these to be opened up and for these to be double hung windows. And then of course, that's what the Department of City Development is looking for as well. There is some illustrated guidance that they can provide you for new construction on a historic property. But I'd also like to make it clear that new construction is not required as part of this submission. It is just something that we wanted to address in this webinar for potential developers, because we do believe that some of you may be contemplating that. We do not view it as necessarily an advantage or a disadvantage at this time. We just want to make sure that we're addressing all possible contingencies so that you know how to move forward.
Yes.
So how, go ahead, Tim, please, if you'd like to comment.
What we really want to see is keeping those King Drive entrances in the same places, keeping them the same size, keeping the big storefront windows and not changing them out to something new and modern. Do you probably want to change it out to a aluminum storefront system? Yes, and we're probably going to allow that given the state of the building, but keep the entrances in the same places, keep the windows the same sizes. That's what we're looking for.
Excellent. Thank you for that clarity, Tim. We appreciate it. So let's talk about project evaluation. How does this work? Initially, you are going to submit your proposals by the due date. They will be collected by Rhonda Zali. She is the project manager, and they will be reviewed for completeness, and an internal DCD-led review committee will be created. Just because it's a DCD-led review committee doesn't mean that it's only city staff looking at it. We will have participation from the local planner for the area who's on the line, Kyle Gast. We will have participation from Historic Preservation, likely, just to give us an idea of what potential proposers will be facing if they are selected, because we understand your submission might not be perfect under the historic preservation guidelines the first time around. And then we will have a committee that will be comprised of both those staff I mentioned and community members to discuss who rises to the top. Then we will go to the Brownsville Advisory Committee. So the Brownsville Advisory Committee covers King Drive and North Avenue, King Drive up to Burleigh, and they look at slightly different evaluation than we do. What we do is provide them a sheet that says, this is an example of the staff sheet that we will provide that talks about the desirability of the proposed use. That sounds subjective, but really what we're talking about is it from that no-no list, like gun shops, liquor stores, check cashing, or is it from the yes list, such as an active street use that would bring people into the property? We'll talk about the impact on the neighborhood, which could include things like parking and amenity adding. We'll talk about the extent and quality of renovations, consistency with the neighborhood plans, which are all available online on DCD's website, and the quality and appropriateness of parking plan. And then, we'll provide that information, and then we'll have a session with the Brownsville Advisory Committee, and this is what their scoring criteria looks like. And you can find this criteria attached to the RFP for your reference, so no need to take a ton of notes or memorize this right now. But the Brownsville Advisory Committee, which is an appointed group of people who are influential in the Brownsville neighborhood and approved for participation within the committee, are going to look for community representation in the inclusion in the design and utility of the project. They're going to look for influence of the Brownsville arts and culture in an entertainment district and how this project would play into the desirability from the committee standpoint for those types of uses. How the developer proposes to engage the community if necessary and required. How the project incorporates the identity of Brownsville. And I kind of alluded, oh my goodness, sorry about that. I kind of alluded to this earlier. The Brownsville Advisory Committee wants to make sure that if you're going to have an arts use, that it is intentional and that it is well thought out. And so what does well thought out and intentional mean? It means if there's going to be arts programming at your location, that the person leading the programming has been identified. Are they a part of the community? Have they led arts related work before? Have they signed on? Are they putting in a letter of interest? And how will that operate? So really think through those end uses and questions. And if there is an arts component to the exterior of the building, which would also be subject to historic preservation review, is it just putting a mural on the outside of a building and calling it a day as far as the arts go? Or is it something that is more inclusive of art throughout the whole project? And they're also going to look at SBE and RPP and how workforce will be involved in this potential project as well. You can find the proposal summary and public disclosure statement on our website at milwaukee.gov/CRE. The form that I featured on the last slides is attached to the actual RFP that shows the special Brownsville criteria as well. As far as evaluation goes, we're also going to be evaluating whether you or anyone who's part of your project team who would own the building is delinquent in any payment of any property taxes or special assessments to the city. We will check whether you have any outstanding judgments to the city of Milwaukee. We'll check whether you have outstanding building code or health code violations. We'll make sure that you haven't been convicted of violating an order of the health department or neighborhood services within the past year. And we'll also look to see whether you've lost any property in tax foreclosure to the city in the past 5 years. These are our standard buyer checks for every proposal, commercial or residential, that's part of our ordinances. So sometimes it can make sense, if you want to check for, if you own other property, to go on the city's website and check your tax status, just to make sure there's nothing you've missed before you submit your proposal, to ensure that you remain in consideration. The assessor's office can link you. If you look up your property on the assessor's website, you can get linked right to the Department of Neighborhood Services to see if you have any violations. And the treasurer's website has an easy tax lookup to see if you owe any taxes. So proposals are due June 30th at 12 noon. If you haven't seen the property personally, or you'd like to bring your group back into the property, such as your structural engineer or your general contractor or anybody else that is going to help you evaluate whether this is the right opportunity for you, or if you know it's the right opportunity for you, how much it's going to cost to get it done, you still have 2 opportunities. One of those is Thursday, May 12th, and the other is Tuesday, June 7th. The building will be open during that time. You will be restricted to certain areas of the building due to the condition of the property. And you will be asked to sign a release upon entering the building for safety purposes. So with that being said, we'd love to hear your questions and to see if anybody else on the presentation team has any closing thoughts on this presentation. So I'm not getting any questions that I see in my chat, but I'm wondering if I'm looking in the right place. Or if the Alderwoman would like to follow up our presentation with any final comments, we would more than welcome that as well. I can stop sharing my screen so you can see all our wonderful faces. And you're welcome to email questions as well.
I'm actually a little shocked that there aren't any questions. I don't see any in the chat either. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you, Matt, for the presentation today. Hopefully, those watching might be stirring up some great ideas that will help to benefit Brownsville. And I look forward to those ideas coming forward. And even if you might discover that this location isn't the best for you, there will be other forward-coming opportunities as well. Again, thank you all for taking the time to come and hear today's presentations. If you think of questions beyond today, please reach out to the Department of City Development to get answers to those questions. And I look forward to this corner being reignited and becoming, a great corner in Brownsville, contributing again to not only Brownsville, but to the best King Drive in the nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman Coggs, and thank you to the wonderful people who've joined us today and listened to the presentation. We can't wait to see your proposals.